Hey everyone, it's Captain Oro here, bringing you another video around Pokémon Champions. Today we're going to be covering weather. In Pokémon Champions, weather wars like they're going to be rampant throughout the VGC scene. So today I have built 7 teams tried and tested around different concepts of weather. So we'll be showing these off so that players who are new or experienced who want to have a team that's already been tested, ready for Champions, can pick these up and use them in game. So to start off with, we are going to look at the rain archetype. Now the rain archetype often consists of Archaludon, Pelipper and Basculegion, and this is our starting point for our first team. Alongside this, we've added Mega Salamence, Sinistcha and Ursaluna, and I'll go over each reason why for the team, why we've picked these Pokemon. Now, Archaludon generally, since its release in Scarlet and Violet DLC, has been predominantly used on these rain teams, and the main reason for that is the combination of rain plus electroshock. For you of those who don't know, newer players, electroshock gives a +1 to special attack every time it's used in the rain. Now it's a 1-turn charge move in the rain. Outside the rain, it takes 2 turns. So that's an important thing to remember when playing this team. If you have weather control, you can click the electroshock and get it, but be careful of your opponent swapping in their own weather, because that will turn it into a 2-turn charge move. Now, this Pokemon that I've designed is on the bulkier side, looking to take advantage of its bulk to stay around, using Snarl to drop those special attacking Pokemon. Archaludon, even though it's not carrying the Assault Vest, is generally bulkier on the physical side, so you do need to be careful of special attacking Pokemon when using Archaludon. The nice thing, its ability Stamina will allow you to take advantage of its body press once it starts to stack up. Stamina, every time it hits, raises the defense level by 1 stage, which makes those body press not insignificant after a while, especially if you're facing off against a physical team. Body press is a really good way to deal with T-Tar as well once it's stacked once. Going on to our weather setter, Pelipper. Pelipper is going to be an important part of this team. You need to decide whether you want to bring it or you're going to use other Pokemon around it. If you can control how the weather is dictated, especially when playing against opposing weather with this Pokemon, you'll get an advantage with it. Understanding when to use the Pokemon to attack or set up Tailwind, or play passively and protect, or switch in something on that spot to then give you weather control later on, is a really important concept of this team. It's just a basic Focus Sash Pelipper, max speed at 128. This is hopefully going to allow you to take advantage of that against certain Pokemon as well. The next Pokemon really enjoys being in the rain. So this is a Swift Swim Pokemon. So Swift Swim Pokemon Basculegion, you have a couple I mentioned in my tier list video. You have Mega Swampert that gets Swift Swim. This is another one. Because we're focusing on Mega around Salamence, I decided to bring Basculegion in. Basculegion is really good in regard to its stab attacks that it has. It has Wave Crash, which is a massive attack. Last Respects, that basically powers up every time one of your Pokemon faints. It gets to a maximum of 200 base power. It is Ghost type attack, so make sure not to be clicking it into those normal types. And then Flip Term, that allows it to exit out and bring something in, or Aqua Jet. Now I've paired it with the Choice Band, so that will lock you into a move, so be careful of what move you lock it into. You don't want to be Aqua Jetting as your opponent pivots in the Farigiraf and you lose your chance to move it out. If you need to change move, you'll need to hard switch it out to get it onto a new move for that one. Mega Salamence, we've gone with a special set. I was really impressed with Mega Salamence special set. I mean, it was a staple back in the day, and I think it's still going to be a staple nowadays. Intimidate is still around, so having your special or your physical attack dropped is not ideal. But with this Pokemon, you do have good coverage, with Hyper Voice becoming a flying type move. It's a spread damage move which deals super effective damage to your grass types, which is helpful. And you also have a really powerful Draco and Meteor that will allow you to attack into opposing dragon types. Tailwind there is to allow you to take advantage of your team's speed tiers to make your team go faster. Similar to Pelipper, it will double the speed that you're playing at. So if you're playing against a team that's lost their speed control, this might give you an edge in this team. And then Protect. Sinister is the next Pokemon, and another Pokemon that gives you another key component, speed control. This is in Trick Room. Trick Room reverses the speeds that your team plays at. So if you were the slowest Pokemon, now you're going first, and that's key for the following Pokemon after this. But I want to talk about its utility. First of all, we've got Hospitality. Any Pokemon that's slightly damaged, if Sinister gets switched in, it will heal its up. So it's a good Pokemon to have, especially with Archaludon, where its stats are getting stacked and becoming bulky so it can't get killed. Sinister then basically gives it a new health boost that allows it to stay around. Rage Powder allows it to redirect any unwanted attacks to its teammate, and Strength Sap allows it to heal up while dropping the attack of a physical attacker. Ursaluna is the final component of the team. I've made my Ursaluna slightly fast so it can take advantage of the Trick Room, but it also can take the advantage of the Tailwind when used. It hits around an 85 speed, so you will find sometimes it will outspeed some Incineroar, but just be careful of that Intimidate. But it's really good into those Incineroar, especially if you headlong rush them or Facade. Now the important thing is, with Ursaluna, you've got the Guts boosted Flame Orb. Guts works where once it's burned, it gives a damage boost to all of its attacks, and Facade works in a way where it gets a boost when burnt as well. So it's a really good Pokemon, powerful Pokemon. It's been around since Scarlet and Violet, and a lot of people have used it to win a lot of tournaments. So be careful when using this Pokemon and think about how you can position it for an endgame sweep if you are going to bring it against your opponents. So when considering using the standard rain team, there are some things you would need to consider, especially when it comes to speed control. You need to consider if you want to have Tailwind setup or Trick Room setup, and working towards that end game where you've got a setup Archaludon, or using Basculegion in the end game to sweep against the opponent's Pokemon. Especially important when you're trying to position your weather for that Basculegion or the Archaludon that's looking to get a boost from those electro shots, or Basculegion is using to look the swift swim ability to outspeed your opponent's Pokemon to take advantage of its big heavy attack stat in the rain alongside its choice band. Now, for our second team, there was no way I could not introduce Mega Gengar. First of all, it's such a strong Mega to have. Its Shadow Tag ability is amazing, and it's just an overall good Mega, hitting the 200 speed with a timid nature, with max investment. It's just incredible. Its coverage of Sludge Bomb and Shadow Ball is really useful in this meta, but there are a few things that you need to consider versus it, such things like Extra Drill in Sand, or King Gambit as well. Now I have teched this team with the Perish Trap strategy, so you basically play the Perish song, and after 3 turns the Pokemon that have heard it, if they're still on the field, will faint. I will say you need to set up a favourable advantage for this strategy to work, and you need to have certain conditions in place to make this work. If you have a Dark type or a Ground type that can outspeed and knock out Gengar, this strategy is not worth going with. You will find yourself losing more games than you are winning, and you'll end up getting frustrated with this mode of the team. This is why there is a second mode to this team that is used more consistently, and then there's parts of this team where you can use Gengar alongside it, or you can look to play the Perish Trap mode on the games where it's more viable, and it's recognizing those moments for this Pokemon. The next Pokemon, another top Pokemon in VGC, we see it everywhere. We've got Incineroar. Now I have equipped this Incineroar with Flare Blitz because there are a couple of Pokemon that cause an issue, mainly Venusaur. That's why it's being equipped with the safety goggles. If you can KO the Venusaur nice and quickly, stop the sunny day or the drought being set up and KO it without it getting slap powdered, then you're in a really good position. It does come with Parting Shot and Fake Out alongside Protect. Now the majority of this team will have Protect bar one Pokemon. The important part behind Protect is to allow you to enable the Perish Trap to be played properly. Most of the times you play the Perish Trap, you Protect on the following turn, you want to Parting Shot out, take Gengar out off that turn so it can't get KO'd. That's the most important thing with Gengar. Bring something in on that slot and then bring Gengar back in. So those are how you kind of play it on a standard turn. There are other ways of playing it. It's not the one linear way to play it. But as I mentioned, it's recognizing those turns where you can make those plays to survive those hits and not give your opponent the advantage during this turn. Flare Blitz is definitely there just for the grass type annoyance of this team. Grass types can be quite annoying for this team to deal with, especially the Venusaurs that can put everything to sleep. That's why this has safety goggles on the team. The next Pokemon, again, we're going to go with Archaludon. However, we're going to go with a different set, and the reason for that is Protect. We need Protect for the Perish Trap mode. The Perish Trap mode is predominantly made up of the Gengar, Incineroar, Archaludon and Politoed, which we'll go over. The Whimsicott is more used in the offensive mode that I'll go over a little bit later. But for this mode, we've equipped the Archaludon with Power Herb, which turns the Electro Shot into a one turn charge move straight away, no weather needed. So that's the benefit of this ability, alongside the ability Sturdy. Sturdy, basically, if you get hit by a super effective attack and it takes you all the way down, will make this Pokemon live on 1 HP. So it's understanding how to protect that Sturdy. It's like having a focus sash. You need to understand the importance of having Sturdy enabled for the end games. During testing, I won loads of games because this Pokemon still had Sturdy and it outsped the Pokemon that it was in the 1v1 with. It literally beat an Excadrill for me because they were adamant and not jolly. I beat them because I was at 150 and they were at 145. I won that game because I just Dragon Pulsed them twice. I had the +1 and it killed them. So it's really important to understand winning that game was down to having Sturdy still available. The next Pokemon is kind of an enabler and a nuisance. Everybody sees it and hates it. It gets a big target on the back, and it's great that it gets a big target on the back. I love that it gets a big target on the back. When you go with your offensive mode, you usually lead Archaludon and Whimsicott. This Pokemon really enables Archaludon to be annoying. Now it's Prankster. Prankster allows you to use status moves with a plus priority. Now it's important to understand that Prankster does not work on dark types like Incineroar or Kingambit. So when you try and do a Prankster move, don't use it against those. It can also get blocked by Pokemon such as Frigarath with their Armor Tail. So that's important to understand. If they have that on their team, they might do that to stop you. Especially with this set, you have Moonblast for those dragon types, Tailwind to speed up your team, and then you also have Fake Tears and Encore. And I absolutely love Encore on this team. Encore, if your opponent protects, take advantage of that. Most people know Whimsicott runs Encore, so they'll be expecting it. So I've equipped you with another Pokemon that can help you out in that situation, and that's the Politoed. The Politoed is really unique in certain situations. So we've got Muddy Water for its stab attack. I wanted a spread damage attack because this team lacks that, so I gave it Muddy Water. It obviously comes with the benefit of if you get an accuracy drop, that can really annoy the opponent. There is a drawback. You do have low accuracy on this move. There's a couple of games that I could have won and I lost because I missed the Muddy Water. The other thing is this is your second Perish Song Pokemon. So if you can't get the Perish Song off with a Gengar, something's threatening the Gengar, you can easily pivot back in the Incineroar and use the Politoed. As I mentioned, your Perish Song mode is Gengar, Incineroar, Archaludon and Politoed. This is the reason. It also allows you, let's say you were able to get the Perish Song off, as you pivot out the Gengar, this is the Pokemon you're most likely going to pivot into because of its item, the eject button. The eject button gets activated once a Pokemon hits into it. So then you get the free switch directly back in to the Gengar that hasn't taken a hit. and then Incineroar can come back in. So you've got two Pokemon that are pivoting out at the same time. You've got two Pokemon coming back at the same time, and then they can just protect and fake out or protect. This is fantastic for the team. It's really good. And as I mentioned, I really love having a second Encore on this team, because a lot of the time people don't expect Polito to have Encore, and I've caught people out and it's won me games. It's so good. Now, when I was designing this team, I had these 5. I was designing it for my friend who's a big Gengar fan, and I was like sat there like, this team is really ground weak. What Pokemon could I use to enable this team further while also not being 100% reliant on the Perish Trap mode? And that comes in the form of Mega D-Knight. Oh my god, when I tell you, this Pokemon has impressed me so much by using him. Now, it originally started off as a bulky set, but I realized actually I need it to be fast. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a bulky set, because I'm not going to use it in the Perish mode. This is for your fast offensive mode, when you want to click buttons and go, you want to click that electric shot, you want to click fake tears, and that's the whole factor around it. It's got lower special attack, a little bit of bulk for you to survive certain hits, alongside its multi-scale, which reduces damage on the first hit. But the Hurricane's 100% accurate in the rain, you got 100% accurate in the rain thunder, and then you've got Draco Meteor for those big stab dragon attack damage. And then combine that with Whimsicott, where you get the fake tears, you're doing a huge amount of damage, making up for those special attack drops if you do hit a Draco Meteor. So here are your tips for the Rain Perish Trap team. As I mentioned before, you need to consider what threats do your opponent have to the Perish mode. Now that needs to be considered in terms of type advantage into Gengar, what threatens the Gengar. As we mentioned, Dark types, Ground types, Ghost types, and Psychic types are super effective against Gengar. So if your opponent has one of these, then consider maybe pivoting to the more offensive Rain mode to give yourself an advantage in that matchup. The other consideration on these ones is also to consider how they can pivot Pokemon in and out. So does their Pokemon, is it a Ghost type to start off with? Because the Shadow tag only works on known Ghost type Pokemon. So if they're a Ghost type, they can get out of that position. If they're not a Ghost type, then they're stuck. But they could have a pivoting move like U-turn, parting shot. So consider when you're looking at the team sheet what Pokemon might have those moves and how you can stop them using those moves. The next thing to consider is how you're repositioning your Pokemon. In both modes, that's hugely important, especially the Perish Trap mode, but even in the Rain mode. One of the common leads I would go with the Rain mode was Archetypes Whimsicott, and if my Whimsicott was under threat of a one-hit KO, I would protect on my Archetypes and bring in my Politoed that would tank the hit because of the eject button, come out, and Whimsicott would come back in under preferable conditions where it could then support Archetypes better, fake tears a Pokemon, Tailwind, Encore a Pokemon into a bad move, and then give my team the advantage. This is talking about how you can gain the upper hand in the match. I think for both teams, if you can pick up an early KO, that will give you the advantage in the game to push and be aggressive going forward, or set that Perish Trap up. So our next team is a blast from the past, a team that was called Japan Sand in the past. It used to consist of Excadrill, T-Tar, Mega Salamence, Rotom-Mosh, and Volcarona, with the filler spot being a Pokemon like Ferrothorn. Now, in regard to this team, and its start point would be Excadrill. It's a Pokemon that can take the advantage of the sand by doubling the speed of its ability called Sand Rush. Now, it's a fairly standard Pokemon. Most people run Iron Head, High Horsepower, and Earthquake. It's important to understand when to utilize the Earthquakes, with Rotom-Mosh having Levitate and Salamence being a flying type, where you can click these freely and do no damage to your teammates. If T-Tar's on the field, then you're probably not going to want to click it because you're probably going to KO your own Pokemon alongside that Sneasel as well. However, equip some tech to allow you to have a little bit more consistency with the Excadrill if needed. I've gone with a Jolly Nature to allow it to outspeed outside of sand certain Pokemon that I found could be an issue, like a max speed Archetypes. The next Pokemon is the Tyranitar. It's just a bog standard set. We've got the Assault Vest on it, Rock Slide, Knock Off, Low Kick, and I've got the coverage move of Ice Punch to deal with any of those grass types that might be slightly annoying for this team. It's hitting a 98 speed, so it kind of gets a good speed once you set up Tailwind, and it's an adamant nature for that maximum damage onto all those Pokemon that can be annoying for this team. The next one, as I mentioned before, Salamence. I've run the special set. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this one. I've explained my reasons for this before. Aerialate is just such a good ability for a mega Pokemon, and those Draco Meteors are just so nice when they do connect. Make sure to set up that Tailwind, give yourself double speed when you've got the sand up and extra gels on the field. Remember, you can Earthquake to the next to this Pokemon very safely. Next one up is our Rotom. Bottom part around this Rotom is I've equipped it with safety goggles. The safety goggles doesn't allow the Pokemon to take any chip or be put to sleep. This is important for this team because it's very susceptible to sleep powder, that coming from Venusaur. So it's really important understanding how to position and outspeed those Venusaurs. Salamence and Sneasel are a very early lead that I like to lead against those Sun teams to stop them getting off an early sleep powder and being able to KO that Pokemon back. The Will-O-Wisp is really nice for any physical attackers, and the Volt Switch just allows me to reposition, which is really important on these sand teams. And then Hydro Pump just covers any fire types or ground types that might be an issue for Excadrill and Tyranitar on that one, with Levitate being able to avoid that ground type damage. Sneasel, as I mentioned, is a new addition to this team. It has its annoying Diaclaw, giving you that status proc every time it hits, or every so often it hits. Close Combat, which deals with those Intimidate mons like Incineroar, and I've equipped the White Herb with the Unburden ability, so you can outspeed a lot of the Pokemon that get speed boosts via weather. That's really important when playing against opposing Excadrills and Tyranitar or anything that might be fast when it gets a speed boost. The Fake Out's there to preserve any kind of break any sashes or be annoying for any Pokemon. As I mentioned, I like leading Salamence and Sneasel in front of the Sun lead when they've got Venusaur, Charizard as a lead. It forces them to protect, allows me to set up a Tailwind, and then I can double into their Venusaur to stop them putting something to sleep. So there's a game plan around that as well. Now the next one is Volcarona. I decided with my Volcarona to have a more supportive set. I think it's important to have some Pokemon that support the team a little bit better. And with this team, I have the Rage Powder, Tailwind, Struggle Bug, and Overheat to deal with those annoying Steel types on the team. Sneasel supports in that as well. And then the Struggle Bug as well to lower the special attack. Excadrill doesn't have great defensive, so having something that can lower those abilities like Intimidate on Salamence and the Struggle Bug here really helps Excadrill stay around a little bit longer if you can position those in the long game. So here are your tips for the Japan Sand team. Think about how you're positioning your weather. Are you looking to start with it, to start aggressively with the Excadrill because your opponent does have any opposing weather and this is a great way for you to open? Or are you looking to position it for the end game once you've got rid of your opponent's opposing weather and giving yourself the most tools available to win the game? This is also important when selecting your supportive tools. What do you need to succeed? So, do you need Sneasel, Rotom, Volcarona or Megamance to win your team? Is it Volcarona for your Tailwind setter over the Megamance? Or are you going to use Volcarona alongside the Megamance to set the Tailwind or protect the Megamance with the Rage Powder so it can get the most out of its Aerialate Hyper Voices? This is an important thing to distinguish between because it also allows you to plan how to disrupt your opponent. Are you using just regular Salamence to intimidate in your opponent's Pokemon so they can't hurt your Excadrill and Tyranitar? Or are you using the Will-O-Wisp on your Rotom to get those attacks down on an Pokemon like King Gambit, where Defiant would be propped if you intimidated it? Consider these things when you look at the opponent's team sheet and what you might need to do to maximize Excadrill and Tyranitar in their best position. So this is our second sand team, and I wanted it to focus around Mega T-Tar. I think Mega T-Tar is a fantastic Pokemon, and I think if you can learn how to use it properly, it can be a very, very dangerous Pokemon once set up correctly. Instead of focusing its partner around being extra drill, I wanted to focus around Garchomp, and with Garchomp, because it doesn't get the speed boost, I gave it the item Choice Scarf alongside the ability Sandveil. Now if you don't know, Sandveil gives an evasion chance to a Pokemon when it's in sand, so that's a fantastic combination when you're thinking about Mega T-Tar. It combines itself with Dragon Claw, Stomping Tantrum, Earthquake and Bulldoze. Now I've made it jolly on this so it can outspeed a lot of the Pokemon in the meta and make sure it can hit the Mega Salamanters that run max speed, and that will allow us to attack them and do a lot of damage alongside the chip damage coming in from T-Tar, and hopefully if they go for that big Draco Meteor, they miss our Garchomp with that Sandveil ability in play. Next Pokemon, obviously Mega T-Tar, the shining light of this team. It's really good and it focuses around its Rock Slides for flinches, Knock Off and Dragon Dance. Now the set we've got it up to is 112 on speed. This is so it can outspeed stuff once it's in a good position after a couple of Dragon Dances. Dragon Dance is really important because it will make, if you can call them bringing in the Incineroar to intimidate and you Dragon Dance as they play passively on their opposing Pokemon, then that can allow you to ignore that intimidate and potentially punish it on the following turn. Knockoff is just a really good move to have for removing Pokemon's items, but just remember with a knockoff you can't remove a Mega Stone. So if you click knockoff into a Mega Pokemon, it's not going to remove its ability to Mega. The next Pokemon, again Sneasel. I think Sneasel is really good on these sand cores. A lot of Pokemon that don't want to deal with these sand cores have a bad matchup into Sneasel. Now with this Sneasel I've actually added the addition of coaching. This is for a couple of reasons, because we've got Garchomp, T-Tar and Gyarados that can benefit from these ones. Now with the coaching benefit to T-Tar, it will allow it to live certain hits like Body Press after a couple of coaching boosts. Now the Fake Out's important alongside the Burden White Herb, as I mentioned, allows it to outspeed certain Pokemon. So I won't go over this Pokemon too much other than the fact that coaching can allow this team to steamroll if positioned correctly alongside the Garchomp or the T-Tar. Gyarados is a supportive Pokemon on this team, so it's not its second Mega. This supportive Pokemon allows us to shut down Trick Rooms, paralyze Pokemon that are fast and give a good stab damage attack to the fire types that might be opposed to this team. Now the safety goggles are there to stop Rage Powder Pokemon redirecting that taunt away from their setter of Trick Room, so you commonly see Sinister and Frigoraph on the teams, so this will stop it doing that. Now as previously mentioned, I had a Rotom Wash. This time because we've got Gyarados on this team, I've gone for a Rotom Heat with Overheat, Volt Switch and Will-O-Wisp. Same set, different Pokemon, but because it's got the safety goggles on the Gyarados so the taunt can be not redirected by Rage Powder, this Pokemon's now got the Covert Cloak, so it can't be faked out when it goes for a Volt Switch or for a Will-O-Wisp on this turn. It is a bulkier set, so it can live a couple of hits because we already have quite a few fast Pokemon on the team, and the Intimidate will support with that. Next, I wanted something to allow T-Tar to have a little bit of speed control that's not fast. If we can get T-Tar against a faster team, then this Pokemon will help us benefit under the Trick Room while also using Strength Sap to reduce the attack damage given out by other Pokemon. Magikarp has a chance of burn, and again Rage Powder just allows us to redirect any Pokemon that's not a grass type or holding the item safety goggles. I've paired this with a Citrus Berry so it can just live a little bit longer as well. So, some tips and tricks for the Mega T-Tar Sand team. Now, the first important thing to consider is when you're using Garchomp, what move are you locking into? If you're locking into Earthquake or Bulldoze, that is going to damage the T-Tar. If you're going to do those moves, you need to make sure that a Pokemon on the other side of the field is immune to those damaging moves. So if you have Sneasler or T-Tar onto the field, it's probably not a good time to go for those spread damage moves, which are going to lower the stats. Now, there is a way that you can proc the Bulldoze onto the Unburden for Sneasler, but that is a small line that only gives you a small advantage in small positions. I've only been able to enable that a couple of times in my matches, so just make sure you carefully position that if that's a line that you're going to go for. In regard to setting up your T-Tar, you need to consider what Pokemon you want alongside it to allow it to set up. Often enough, a good enough lead for me has been T-Tar plus Sneasler. This allows me to fake out an opposing Pokemon, set up a Dragon Dance on one turn, and on the second turn, protect and coaching following it up, or even get a little bit greedy if I think my opponent's going to play passive and try and protect their Pokemon, and I will play a second Dragon Dance alongside a coaching. If I get that second Dragon Dance up and the coaching, I'm starting to steamroll these teams as long as they're getting hit. The important thing also with T-Tar is if you're playing against opposing weather, this is our first Mega that will allow us to change the weather back by enabling the Mega. So if you don't know, if Pelipper comes in and sets Drizzle as you Mega, the rain will go up first, and then as I Mega the T-Tar, the sand will be reset up. So if the T-Tar was on the field first, we'd re-get the sand by Megaing the Pokemon. So that is something important to consider when you're facing against opposing weather teams. If my T-Tar is set up, do I need it to be Mega'd now or later down the line? The next thing, as I've mentioned already, is how can you best protect / support your sweepers? Obviously, we've already mentioned Sneasler is a good protection. Gyarados comes in with good Intimidate and speed control value, or stopping Trick Rooms getting set up. The important thing with stopping Trick Rooms getting set up is making sure they're not the item Mental Herb. The next part is obviously you could use Sinister to redirect any attacks, heal up the T-Tar, and lower the attacks on opposing physical attackers with Strength Sap or a Matcha Gacha Burn. Those are important things to consider when looking to make Mega T-Tar the absolute beast that it can be in Pokemon Champions. Next up are our snow teams. We've got two different Mega Snow setters on these teams, and I'll show you what I've come up with the idea and concept. This Mega Frostlass team is a kind of snow balance team, I would say. I really like the combination of Frostlass, Kingambit and Clefable. I think they're really good as a trio together. Adding Sneasler again onto a team allows us to enable a couple of these Pokemon as well, alongside the redirection that Clefable affords this team. Megamance was another Pokemon. I just wanted to have another Intimidator alongside a Tailwind setter, just in case we needed that sort of speed control. I'm not too worried about Trick Room on this team because of the Kingambit. The Kingambit has a small amount of speed involved in it, but that's something we can discuss in a second. And then the Basculegion was something that I wanted to have water coverage onto the team. Fire teams can be a little bit annoying for this team, or fire types I should say, can be a little bit annoying for this team. Basculegion can take advantage of it, but it's a different Basculegion to one that we've seen previously before, and I won't overgo that. For those of you who don't know, Mega Frostlass is a new Mega introduced in Pokemon ZA. The ability was confirmed to be, it says here Curse Body, but it will be Snow Warning. So Snow Warning for us sets up the snow, which allows us then to set up the Aurora Bell, and then we can have 100% accurate blizzards, and alongside being the ghost typing, which can be handy in certain matchups, we've got the Shadow Ball to deal with other ghost types. Not that it's really needed, because our next Pokemon is an expert at dealing with those ghost types. So we've got our Kingambit, the tried and tested Kingambit with the black glasses, Kowtow Cleave, Sucker Punch and Sword Stance. I didn't want to add a steel move onto this Pokemon. It didn't feel like it was necessary to deal with the fairy types. A lot of the fairy types after a +2 Kowtow or Sucker Punch with the black glasses are actually taking quite significant damage. The one thing I did want to ensure that is if we faced another Kingambit, that we were outspeeding the other black glasses one, so we could take advantage of that fact, and that would then help us win that matchup. So to support these two Pokemon, I've brought alongside Clefable for the Unaware factor. For those of you who don't know, Unaware ignores stats boosts on the opposing Pokemon. So for example, if there was a +2 King Gambit and they went in with a Kowtow Cleave, it would treat it like it was neutral, which is fantastic for a fairy type that is already resisting dark type damages. Now, alongside this, I've added Follow Me and Encore. Encore is a little bit of a special tech. As I mentioned previously, I really appreciate Encore sometimes being really annoying, locking your Pokemon into a move that they don't really want to. It is a bulky set for the Clefable, alongside having a Citrus Berry to make sure it lasts round. I have seen this Clefable live eat 2 or 3 hits that enables my King Gambit actually to get up a second Sword Stance or 2 attacks if I need it to. The next Pokemon on this team is a Focus Sash Sneasler. So this is slightly different to what we've previously run with the Unburden. However, it is still running Unburden, but just with the Focus Sash. On this team, because we haven't got Sand, which would chip away at the Focus Sash, I think the Focus Sash is fine enough to have on this version of the team. Now that's obviously something to consider when playing against opposing Sand, because your Focus Sash would get broken if you allowed it. So it's something to consider when you're playing against those teams. It has a standard set that we used on the Mega T-Tar team, so I'm not going to go over too much of it, but the coaching can be really useful for the Frostlass and the King Gambit in this matchup. Again, one of my favorite Megas to run. It seems to be jumping onto my teams anytime it has a chance. When I'm thinking I need a Tailwind setter, Mega Salamence. Special set again, Hyper Voice, Draco Meteor, just doing what it does well. So I can't change it. I'm not going to change it. I'm sure someone will innovate it at one point and we'll have a look at what that looks like. The next one is good old Basculegion. Obviously we had this on the Rain team, but this is a different Basculegion. Yes, it's still got a choice item on it with Choice Scarf because I wanted that speed. However, it's the adaptability boost. So adaptability gives a multiplier to the attacks that it has that match the typing. Obviously you already get that multiplier, so it goes from a 1.5 multiplier to a 2 times multiplier. That means this thing hits hard. It's got water ghost coverage. We're running the same set. It's the 252 set. Wave Crash, Last Respects, Flip Turn, and Aqua Jet are going to do so much damage. And I've played this team a couple of times. The reason why I'm smiling such a big face is I didn't realize how good this Snow team could be. You do need to be careful versus opposing weather, but we'll go over that with tips and tricks. These are your tips and tricks for the Snow Balance team. It's important with this team recognizing which Mega to use. Frostlass demands its Mega majority of the time. Its base form isn't that great in this current meta lineup, just due to it losing the ability to set up Aurora Veil with no snow warning enacted. Now, if you're switching to the Mega Salamence mode, you have the opportunity to use Tailwinds to support the rest of the team alongside the Basculegion or King Gambit or the Sneasler, and that will allow you to enable the Salamence to become a sweeper as such. And this is recognizing which supports to use as well. Alongside the Clefable, the Sneasler can actually support the team quite a lot. Making sure to protect its sash is an important aspect. Once its sash is broken down to 1 HP, however, you'll be able to unburden and use that unburden to be the fastest thing on the field. So sometimes you don't even need to set up the Tailwind, you just need to let your opponent to have the opportunity to get your Sneasler down to 1 HP where the sash gets activated, and then you can close combat or Dire Claw everything away. I've won against teams that are running Sun after setting up a Tailwind, looking to fake out. As I mentioned, it's one of my favorite combinations, Salamence plus Sneasler, to deal with those Sun teams. What you want to consider with this team, because it's a balanced team, is the games are potentially going to be a bit longer and drawn out than other teams. So you need to consider what your win conditions are. Is that an end game King Gambit going for the sucker punches, or is that your Basculegion going for the massive last respects into your opponent's Pokemon, or are you looking to get those blizzards off to the opponent's Pokemon that are super weak to those ice type attacks. So this is our second to last team that we are going to be posting in this video. This is focusing around Snowroom. Yes, Snowroom. We are going to be using a Mega Abomasnow for this team because it's the slower snow setter of the two Megas. Frostlass is too quick for this team, so we've changed the Mega Abomasnow with a Giga Drain over the Shadow Ball slot. It's got a quiet nature, so it underspeeds a lot of the Pokemon, but it's important to note that some Pokemon will still underspeed it in Trick Room, so making sure that you understand your Pokemon's speed tiers on the opponent's team, like a Torkoal being slower than this Pokemon, is important on that factor. With Farigiraf, we've got a slightly different set to what people normally see. Usually it's Hyper Voice Psychic. We've gone with Decleam, Psychic Noise, Trick Room and Protect. This was suggested by a friend who was supporting testing this team, and once we switched to this set over the standard set, we saw some positive results. The Decleam really helps with the dragon types that this team kind of struggles with if you don't bring a Abomasnow onto the team, and the Psychic Noise still procs the Throat Spray for us while also stopping Pokemon from recovering, so that was a nice niche that we found on this team. Now, instead of giving ourselves Incineroar, we went with Scrafty. An update in Pokemon Legends ZA was that Scrafty got Parting Shot. Now, if this is true in Champions, this could be a big change for Scrafty. Scrafty historically was the Intimidate Pokemon that people used to use over Incineroar. But once Incineroar joined the game, people switched to Incineroar. Now, it's still most likely not going to change that fact, but it does give us another useful tool and another intimidator that we can use, especially in these Trick Room centric teams. Now, the nice thing for Scrafty is it's always had access to knockoff, and this is something pointed out by Jay Jingles on his video around Scrafty, and I would definitely go and suggest checking that out. I'm not going to go into too much depth on this, but I put safety goals on this Pokemon because I wanted to have the ability to use Parting Shot to get my Trick Room Sweeper in, and also be able to reposition alongside not getting put to sleep. So that's an important fact to consider with Scrafty on this team. That's also really good into those Sun teams that we've already mentioned that can be a bit of a nuisance for certain teams when they lead Venusaur. The next Pokemon is Corviknight. This pairs nice and well with one of our Trick Room Sweepers. The idea behind Corviknight is that we can Earthquake freely next to it while also setting up a Tailwind for the end game. This is important because there will be certain game positions where actually setting up a Tailwind for an end game Glimmora or Ursaluna could be very advantageous for us. This is important to manage and make sure you do this at the last turn of the Tailwind, so that you can make sure that you catch your opponent by surprise by doing this. The bulk up's there to make sure those Brave Birds really damage, and you've also got Roost and Citrus Berry to make sure Corviknight stays on the field. Ursaluna, as I mentioned, is just an absolute animal. We've kept the same set, we've kept it nice and fast for it because a lot of this team are around this speed tier. So again, it's important to manage that expectation around versus another Ursaluna. However, we all feel that having Corviknight and Abomasnow plus Scrafty will give you enough tools to deal with opposing Ursalunas, and this Ursaluna would be free to deal with other threats on the team. While thinking of the 6th slot for this team, we decided to go for Glimmora. Glimmora is our kind of let's click a Meteor Beam, take a threat out while trying to set a Trick Room or be more aggressive. There are aggressive ways to play this team, so you can lead with Glimmora and Scrafty, get a Fake Out onto something, get that +1 Meteor Beam. Even if they protect, you're now at +1, so that's really handy. You've also got Spiky Shield, Sludge Bomb and Earth Power. That's good coverage for this team. Earth Power is nice coverage to have even though the Ursaluna's there, but if you don't bring the Ursaluna, then you still have that ground coverage for those annoying fire types. Also, the idea behind this is obviously that you can then hit Pokemon that are flying types with that Meteor Beam. Remember, it's a 2-charge move without that Power Herb, so that's something to consider. So these are your tips and tricks for the snow room. So the first thing to consider is how are you looking to set up your trick room. Obviously, this being a trick room centric team, you will most likely majority of the time look to set up that trick room. That can be done in different ways. You could lead Glamora plus Farigiraf, where the Glamora looks to nuke something off the field that's a danger to the trick room sweeper, and then it has sludge bombs. This is why our Glamora is a slow Glamora and modest, and then it can take advantage of that, while the Farigiraf either sets up the trick room or protects to avoid a double up, while the Glamora takes maybe out, let's say, a Charizard out, and then that allows us to get Scrafty in to then fake out the Pokemon and set up trick room successfully, and then allowing Ursaluna or Abomasnow to come in under conditions that it would prefer. There's also considering that thing about getting your trick room sweeper in safely. So thinking about the parting shot on the Scrafty is designed there to enable you to get into that position. Now, what a lot of fast teams will do, and I've noticed while playing these trick room teams, is they will let you successfully get up that trick room team, and then knowing that that Pokemon can pivot, will look to double target that slot to take out your trick room sweeper. So it is something to consider. If you see them double protect, it might not be the opportunity that you're hoping that will open up the game because of that double protect. Sometimes you might want to call it out, not go for that fake out, remove the Scrafty and get Ursaluna or Abomasnow in, but that's a call, and it's a hard, what you would establish as a hard read. So making sure that you get safe ways of getting your trick room sweeper in is the most important factor. That could be letting a Pokemon go down after it's of use, after it does some damage in the trick room, and they double it into that slot, allowing Ursaluna to come in with full HP rather than none. Then what you need to recognize is if you do bring the Corviknight, can you set up that Tailwind as trick room ends? So we've got one turn left, we've got Ursaluna or Glamora in the back, Farigiraf is pushing out that damage with the Dazzling Gleam or the Psychic Noise, and you're about to set up Tailwind. That is the prime opportunity to get those Pokemon once that Tailwind is set up in and finish that game off for you, especially if they can outspeed under those conditions. So this is our final team in the Sun archetype. Now, I've only designed one team for the Sun archetype. Unfortunately, I ran out of time for testing in terms of the timescale I wanted to get this video completed by. So I will reference that Len VGC came out with a really good Sun Room team with Mega Gardevoir, so I would definitely recommend checking that out on that one. I'll find the link and pop it in the video below in the comment section so that you can check that out. But for this team, I've gone with a Mega Charizard Y, and I've also gone with a Venusaur Mega. There's a reason behind that, and I will discuss that while we go throughout that team. But this team comprises of quite a typical kind of looking Marco Silva look, with the Venusaur and the Whimsicott being the new added elements on this team. Charizard Mega Y is a Pokemon that looks like it's going to potentially be very, very strong in this format. There's only a few threats that kind of deal with it very well, and if you can position this Pokemon well into those threats, then you can deal with it alongside its members that support this team. Obviously, when you Mega Charizard, it gives you the ability Drought, so it's another Pokemon that will give you the weather in your favor if you use it correctly. So again, as we spoke about, if someone pivots in a T-Tar and then you Mega, it will give you the Sun losing the T-Tar its special defense boost, which can be very handy because we've equipped this Charizard with Solar Beam, which is super effective against those T-Tars because that's what it is like. Now, unlike other people's Charizards, which I've seen floating around where they've just gone max speed, I've gone with a little bit of a bulkier version with a little bit less speed, and that's because we've got the Tail Room element of this team. We've got the Trick Room plus the Tailwind, and that's something I wanted to account for in this team to make sure that if we had conditions set up, that the Charizard could actually be used under Trick Room before the Trick Room ends to deal with anything that might be fast to enable other Pokemon on this team. Moving on to our second Pokemon, and our second Mega is Venusaur. Originally I had this down as a Focus Sash Venusaur, but I had issues with my Whimsicott and I wanted to move the Focus Sash across the Whimsicott, so I started exploring Mega Venusaur. Mega Venusaur is actually a very bulky Pokemon when you take into account the Thick Fat on it. Thick Fat is an ability that reduces damage that allows the Pokemon to stay around. This is really important for Venusaur because there's a lot of attacks that could actually KO Mega Venusaur if it didn't have this ability. Now, we ran it with the speed of 112 because that is a good speed point to reach for a lot of Pokemon that can double its speed under Tailwind or in sunny conditions. It also makes it kind of useful under Trick Room, similar to the Charizard. We've got bulky Pokemon that can put Pokemon to sleep. Obviously there's a risk chance with Sleep Powder missing. I have lost games from Sleep Powder just missing or them getting a turn 2 Wake Up. But then we've equipped it with Leaf Storm and Sludge Bomb. Sometimes Solar Beam misses those KOs, so I've equipped Venusaur with Leaf Storm so it can do much more damage with that Leaf Storm, and hopefully pick up those water type KOs that we need for the team to function properly. The next Pokemon is a Pokemon that we've seen in the previous team, however it's the more normal standard set. So we do have Hyper Voice and Psychic, Trick Room and Protect, but it is the Throat Spray set again. I do really like the offensive Farigiraf on some of these teams, just to kind of pump out spread damage, do big damage alongside the other Pokemon that are trying to hit hard. You could consider a bulkier set, but at the moment I think the meta is kind of in a more offensive way, so it's kind of good to be able to dish out the same amount of damage that someone else is giving back to you. Ursaluna, as mentioned before, it's the kind of fast Ursaluna that we've used in previous teams. This just allows us, because we've got that Tailwind element, to be able to outspeed Pokemon that it wouldn't normally outspeed, and then also have that Trick Room element where this team is too fast and the Ursaluna can successfully set this up. The next Pokemon is the infamous Incineroar. Now this Incineroar is Assault Vest, it's not the Pike Shot version. I wanted it to be Adamant Nature so it can abuse the sun as well with those big flare blitzes, but I also wanted it to have some defensive capabilities, so I gave it the Assault Vest, and this is important when facing Pokemon like Primarina, where it can get a Throat Chop off, stop the Hyper Voice, and then get itself out with the U-turn. Or even a common lead on this team can be Farigiraf Incineroar, getting the Fake Out off onto the Pokemon and then pivoting out to get the Ursaluna in at the Trick Room. Obviously, as I mentioned, you just need to watch out for that double up chance. Now, the next Pokemon is Whimsicott. As I mentioned in my previous Rain team, this Whimsicott's slightly different though because it's a Focus Sash. This Whimsicott is focused predominantly around supporting the fast, sunny mode, and that's why it has Sunny Day. Often enough, when your opponent sees you have Mega Charizard and you Mega it, they tend to hold back to their weather control. So this being Whimsicott allows you, as they pivot in their Pelipper or T-Tar or Frost/Mega, you can reset the weather and get those big heat waves or solar beams off into the Pokemon that you would like to do. This will also stop Assault Vest, Archetypes, Chaladons being able to Electroshot your Charizard on turn 1, which would allow you then to have a safe Protect on the following turn. So it's really handy. I won a couple of games off of my opponents not recognizing the tech, though I think it is a very obvious tech for the Sun team to have, and it having Focus Sash is just a safe item, so it has to run Protect so that Fake Out Pokemon can't break that Sash. So this is your Sun Tail Room tips and tricks slide. So what mode is giving you the safest lines to win the game is important to recognize. Is it your Trick Room mode? Is it your Charizard Sun mode? Is it actually your Venusaur, Mega Venusaur Sun mode? This is important to recognize, especially when you've got two Megas on the table. Both of the Pokemon have solid abilities, with base Charizard having solar power in the sun that boosts its damage, and Venusaur having chlorophyll, which boosts its speed. So you can use these kind of flexibly on the team, but understand that they are both susceptible to certain attacks and certain speed Pokemon. So it might be beneficial sometimes to have the Thick Fat Venusaur to survive certain hits, be able to sleep something back, sleep powder something back, or attack back and take out a big KO, or have Charizard set up the Sun for the Venusaur or the offensive Incineroar, so the Incineroar alongside the Charizard can take a KO and stop your opponent steamrolling the game. This is important, understanding the risk and reward of your team. As I mentioned, there's a few moves on this team that can miss. Those moves being Sleep Powder, Air Slash, and Heat Wave. Those can sometimes lose you games and they can sometimes win you games. So you need to understand the risk of clicking Sleep Powder 3 times in a game. There might be a chance that you miss one. This is just part of the game that you'll need to learn to manage along the way while using teams like this. But at the same time, the reward for hitting those sleep powders can basically win you the game, especially if that Pokemon stays asleep for the full 3 turns that it can do. The next thing is, how can you position your speed control to give you the best endgame? So like we spoke about, Charizard can set up the Sun for a non-mega Venusaur alongside Whimsicott doing the same. The Whimsicott can also set up the Tailwind for your Ursaluna, or you could set up the Trick Room using your Farigiraf in the end game to win with your Ursaluna once you remove their slower Pokemon off the field, and that could win you the game by reversing the speed order in favor of that Ursaluna. So there we have it. This is our Weather War archetype rental teams. I just want to say thank you to all the people who were involved in the testing and building process. I really appreciate their opinions and feedback on the teams that were built for this video. If you want to see these teams in testing, I will be testing them on the Showdown ladder during my Twitch stream on Tuesday. That will allow me to show you how they function and work. So if you are interested, make sure to drop a follow below on my Twitch and my X. That will as well update you when I go live. And if you want to follow more content on my YouTube channel, make sure to drop a follow there as well, and I'll be updating more as we get more information on Champions alongside Champions content. But yeah, if you like this video, make sure to drop a like and let me know in the comments below if there was any archetypes that you're really looking forward to using during Pokemon Champions. But again, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.